where we are with Donald Trump. We are just days away from his inauguration in Washington next Monday afternoon, UK time. But today we've seen an extraordinary report out from the US Special Counsel, Jack Smith, in which he has said that if it wasn't for the fact that Donald Trump was president-elect, he would have been able to get a guilty verdict on charges, basically that he had engaged in an unprecedented criminal effort, he says, to overturn his 2020 election defeat. Well, let's talk about this with Greg Swenson. He's the chairman of Republicans Overseas UK and joins us now. A very good morning to you, Greg.
Good morning, Julia. Great to be here.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. This report, the timing of this report, very damning. This will not have gone down well with Donald Trump. But what exactly is this special counsel saying? Who appointed him, and is he a political appointee, and what is he arguing?
Yeah, he's very much a political appointee, and he's having a sore loser moment where he's saying, okay, I dropped the case because the case was, had very little merit. Same with the documents case, same with most of the indictments, or all. And yet he's saying, oh, I could have beat him. This guy was appointed by Merrick Garland, who's the attorney general, very political, very left-leaning attorney general. And so it just kind of points to the whole charade of this. So it was a last-minute stunt. He resigned officially last week, Jack Smith. And so this was just kind of his final
his swan song. Well,
it's shameless, absolutely shameless.
Look, there's no doubt at all. Look, I've always argued that I think that what Donald Trump did was actually basically an affront to democracy. Whether it was criminal or not, it was an affront to democracy. It made him unfit for public office. I also think that the criminal charges against him largely were politically inspired. The timing of them was very clear. It was only when he was making a comeback. They thought he'd been and gone, didn't have to do that. So I think it's possible to hold both these ideas in your head at the same time. And also that I don't think Donald Trump is a desirable person to have in the Oval Office, but he's a damn sight better than Kamala Harris. And I'd said before the election, I would rather he won than she did. I think he'll do some very good and hopeful things in various areas.
Sure.
But Jack Smith said that Donald Trump, in his words, he says, inspired his supporters to commit acts of physical violence, and that there would have been enough evidence for a jury to convict him. He said in the January 6th riots, he knowingly spread a false narrative about fraud in the 2020 election. He said the charges could be justified against Trump's co-conspirators, but reached no final conclusions. And he says, indeed, but for Mr. Trump's election and imminent return to the presidency, the office assessed that the admissible evidence was sufficient to obtain and sustain a conviction at trial. Now, we know we've had the sentencing. We had the sentencing in the Stormy Daniels hush money case. Look, he doesn't have presidential immunity for that. It is quite right that he should have been sentenced. Yeah. He wasn't going to be sent to prison. We knew he wouldn't. No one. It would have been outrageous.
It was a bookkeeping. It was a bookkeeping. It wasn't hush money. Okay. Hush money is perfectly legal. Yeah.
But you're allowed to pay porn stars.
Yeah. Non-disclosure. Yeah. Non-disclosures.
But here's the thing.
Completely kosher.
We had evidence that was given to various, congressional inquiries about what happened on January the 6th, the insurrection, the riots, the uprising, whatever we're going to call it. Yeah. Even from close Trump allies, family members and others under oath, saying, they were imploring Donald Trump to stop what was going on. When they saw the violence, they were imploring him to stop it, and he chose not to for hours on end. Close aides and even family members have said that. What he did, whether it was criminal or not, was certainly wrong. Wasn't it?
Right. Mistakes for sure.
But there wasn't a mistake. He knew what he was doing.
But Julia, I noticed in the statement that you read, you forgot to mention that he encouraged the people to peacefully and patriotically, exercise their First Amendment rights. So, this was a one-sided prosecution, and prosecutors.
But wait a second, but Greg.
Yeah, let me finish.
He's encouraging people to be peaceful and respectful. At the point when they're not, when you can see people rioting and storming. The live on television, and he was watching it live on television, and we know that people were with him. At that point, when you see that they're not peaceful, you would step up and say something if you were right.
No doubt. I don't think we're trying to relitigate Jan 6th. It was a horrible moment, and I think the president made mistakes. But we're talking about is this special prosecutor, Jack Smith, releasing this days before the inauguration, when this statement, this report, has been in the DOJ's hands since November, December. So they sat on it and waited to release it right now. It's just sore loser syndrome. Jack Smith is one of the most losing Department of Justice prosecutors, perhaps of all time. And then this comes at the same, like with an interesting backdrop after the Hunter Biden after the Joe Biden pardoning Hunter, he disparaged those special prosecutors, in David Weiss specifically. And so David Weiss has released a statement that said, essentially Biden is undermining the very foundation of the American justice system. It's probably a good moment to stop, trying to indict your political opponents because you disagree with them. And that's what happened with all these indictments. There might have been some merit to it, but surely not enough to convict, which is why he dropped the case. And then he says, oh, Monday morning quarterbacking, I could have got him. I really could have.
But they dropped the case because he's going to have presidential immunity. You know that as well as I do. But bearing in mind,
major challenges to this case.
Look, Donald Trump is the man who campaigned in 2016 about Hillary Clinton, lock her up, lock her up. The Democrats were appalling in the way they behaved after his victory in 2016, claiming it was all Russian collusion. Look, a load of abject lies on it. I mean, frankly, you're all as bad as each other, the Democrats and the Republicans, on both those fronts. But this is incredibly damaging to what is supposed to be to the world's leading democracy. I mean, I don't think America is a proper democracy anymore because of the politicization of the justice system, the big money, and the way that the way that these things are decided now. It seems to me that your home country is no longer sort of a beacon of light for democracy in a way that it should be.
It will be. There's some mistakes. It's a speed bump. And there'll be some corrections to it. I really hope there are. I mean, you notice Trump did not prosecute Hillary Clinton. I know he did a little campaign rally excitement and saying lock her up. That was kind of a pushback. But I think it really was weaponized after President Trump announced he was running again. Recall, Julia, this case, the Jack Smith case, and all of the other ones, which there was no mention of them until he announced he was running for president. So clearly, this was a deliberate attempt to prevent him from running for president. Whereas for 3 years, they sat on everything and said, no blood, no foul. I mean,
no, there's no question at all. The timing was political. Can I just ask you, though, I mean, looking ahead to, the election cycle starts again, even before Inauguration Day, to the next presidential election. A lot of talk for the last few years of Gavin Newsom, the Democrat governor of California, as a potential runner. My God, no one loves Gavin Newsom as much as Gavin Newsom loves Gavin Newsom, that's for sure. Do you think that what's been happening with the Californian fires, and it's ongoing, we've got near hurricane level winds expected over the next couple of days. I mean, 100,000 people on evacuation orders, so many homes burnt down, people have died. But do you think that actually what's happened to the Californian fires, the abject failure across the board in California on so many fronts, do you think that that's put paid to Gavin Newsom's chances?
I do. I mean, look, politicians have come back from worse. And I think President Trump's probably a good example of that. But this one is going to be really difficult because it's his policies that he has endorsed, and he has been supported by the same climate lunatics that have wrecked California, not just with the water supply, but more importantly, with the opposition to clearing excess forest and excess brush. I mean, not only were people doing that in California, the same governments, the proper governments, for 150 years, the Indian tribes, Native Americans or indigenous people of America tribes, they were doing that centuries ago. It's common sense, and they've lost all sense of common sense. I think he's buried. I think he's done.
I was going to say, Greg, climate change. Greg Swenson, Chairman of Republicans Overseas UK, thank you very much indeed for that.